It is my prayer that this meeting, as we spend time reflecting and acting on what it means to live into right relations, as we honor Indigenous voices and the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, as we engage in education and conversation and vote on Remit 1, establishing an autonomous national Indigenous organization, as we worship and work together in the light of the sacred fire, we will reflect our commitment to an envisioned future where we are one. So knowing that I do so in the light of the sacred fire that is being lit for us in Cape Croker, I constitute this meeting in the name of Jesus Christ, the one true head of the church, and by the authority vested in me by the Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council for whatever business may properly come before it. As we gather to share the work that rightly comes before this court, we take time to acknowledge that Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council is located on the traditional and stolen territories of many First Nations, and that this land is the subject of broken treaties. I name that here in Alliston, where the leadership team is located, this is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. This land is the subject of the Lake Simcoe Nottawasaga Treaty 18, the territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. This includes Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. I invite you to use the chat to acknowledge the traditional territories, peoples, and nations that you are joining us from. We name, as you do so, the historical and ongoing colonial violence on this land committed against Indigenous peoples by colonialism, racism, and religious beliefs. May our land acknowledgement be a sign of our ongoing commitment to live into right relations. May we never cease to work toward wholeness of the First Nations peoples of this land. When they are ready, we will honor this commitment by joining our worship team, Anne, Rebecca, and Joyce, at the Sacred Fire at Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. But now we'll take a moment of worship to gather us in this place and at this time.
Scripture reading from 1 Corinthians 12:12-27. There is one body, but it has many parts. But all its many parts make up one body. It is the same with Christ. We are all baptized by one Holy Spirit, and so we are formed into one body. It didn't matter whether we were Jews or Gentiles, slaves or free people. We are all given the same Spirit to drink. So the body is not made up of one part. It has many parts. Suppose the foot said, "I am not a hand, so I don't belong to the body." By saying this, it cannot stop being part of the body. And suppose the ear says, "I am not an eye, so I don't belong to the body." By saying this, it cannot stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, how could it hear? If the whole body were an ear, how could it smell? God has placed each part in the way He wanted it to be. If all the parts were the same, how could there be a body? As it is, there are many parts, but there is only one body. The eye can't say to the hand, "I don't need you." The head can't say to the feet, "I don't need you." In fact, it is just the opposite. The parts of the body that seem to be weaker are the ones we can't do without. The parts that we think are less important we treat with special honor. The private parts aren't shown, but they are treated with special care. The parts that can be shown don't need special care, but God has put together all the parts of the body, and He has given more honor to the parts that didn't have any. In that way, the parts of the body will not take sides. All of them will care for one another. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, Every part shares its joy. You are the body of Christ. Each one of us is a part of it. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
We are one as we come, joyful to be here in the praise on our lips. There's a sense that God is near. We are one as we sing, we are found, and we come before the Lord's grace as we meet together in this place. We are one as we share brokenness and fear in the touch of a hand. There's a sense that God is here. We are one as we care, as we hear, we are healed, and we share warmth in God's embrace as we meet together in this place.
Let us pray. God of the seasons, time has come again for another regional gathering. To this time we bring all the celebrations and hardships, the joys and the sorrows, hopes and questions important to all individuals gathered and represented here. Here we pause to remember those whose lives we have celebrated. Here we remember the highlights of our region, friends and colleagues gathering together to share stories and reflections of faith. We gather to look forward to what the coming years have in store. We know that it will not always be easy, that life and well-being of the region will always have a mixture of easy and difficult. As we meet and discuss the life and work of the region and the United Church of Canada, we pray, God, that you will be part of our discussion. May your Spirit move in our hearts, opening them to hear what each of us has to offer, bringing light to both possibilities and realities, drawing us always to consider what you would have us be and do in this time and in our many places. Remind us that we are called to be bearers of Christ's life, light, and love to all we meet. Help us to live in such a way that we draw closer to your vision for us and journey faithfully in your way. In this time together, we celebrate the many gifts we all have to offer. Help us to offer what we can to your service, mindful of our great varied gifts, applauding and celebrating one another's triumphs, and holding one another in light through difficulties. These things we pray in the name of Jesus, in whose name we, in hope, we gather together as a community. Amen.
I always love it when I'm joining in worship and I'm singing and my computer tells me I'm muted. Like, oh, that's when I know I'm really getting into the song. I'm going to invite Terry now to present our opening and procedural motion on page 32 and 33 of your workbook. Since I've already assumed the permission given in point 1 of the motion, authorizing the agenda and business committee to make any changes necessary, I'll ask the forgiveness of the court as we consider this motion.
Good afternoon. I guess it still is, folks. How are you doing? So just to run through the motion as to what it's all about is it establishes the procedures by which we will conduct business, clarifies and confirms the way in which decision-making will happen. As President Jennifer noted, for your reference, it's on page 32 of the workbooks. So part of what the things that we will take into account here is to adopt the agenda that was circulated through the workbook, authorize the agenda and business committee to make any changes as necessary. Approve the meeting from May 26th through 27th of 2023, receive minutes from the various meetings of the executive and the commissions. We appoint Fred Monteith as a parliamentarian, appoint myself as the chair of Agenda and Business, name Maggie Dieter to serve as the Equity Support Minister, and name as the Agenda Business Committee the following: President Jennifer Irving, myself as the chair of Business Agenda Business, and also naming acting executive minister Mark Laird and executive assistant Sue Dulaban as the committee. The other important points out of this is that we've set we will be setting the deadline for new business to be submitted to the Agenda and Business Committee as of 9 p.m. tomorrow, September 28th. We will receive all the written reports within the workbook that was distributed, and we will adopt the following method of dealing with proposals for action by the Regional Council. Step 1, the presenter will outline what is the issue and the suggested way in which the Regional Council might respond to the issue. Step 2, the President will inquire if there are any questions for clarification, and please note for clarification only. Then step 3, the President will ask if there are any changes or additions being suggested for the proposal. And hopefully using warm and cool signals, we will seek to come closer to agreement on how to respond to the issue. And then step 4, once there is significant agreement, the President will invite the presenter to move the motion, at which point the Regional Council enters the formal debate process. So I can't remember, am I making the motion? All right, so I am making the motion just to...
No, hold. You need questions for clarification first.
I'm not following the procedure there?
No, you're not following the procedure you just outlined.
I just test you guys on that every time. So is there any clarification? Any questions for clarification on that motion from anyone? I see one hand.
So if you do have a question for clarification, Louise, I see you've done it. You've raised your hand. So anyone who has a question for clarification, raise your hand and then we'll acknowledge you. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Terry, I heard you say that the closing for new business was tomorrow, the 28th.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe today is the 28th.
Oh, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. It is today at 9 p.m. the 28th.
Thank you, Louise. I was going to mention that.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions for clarification or anybody that needs help raising their hand? I mean, it's hard to see, but if you did, you could like wave violently and we'd try to catch you. But when you raise your hand, it really helps our people who are running the tech to be able to see you and point you out to me. Okay, seeing no more questions for clarification. Are there any changes or changes to wording or anything that anyone would like to make? Again, you can raise your hand. Now I hope I gave enough space and time for that. If not, we can always go back, but I'll call for Terry to make the motion.
Okay, then I so move that we accept the opening and procedural motion of proposal 1. We need a seconder.
Oh, Mark said he can second the vote as the executive minister. So we'll let Mark second that vote if that's okay with the court. And this is a chance if you wanted to have any conversation around this would be the debate time. And if not, I'll call for the vote, which I believe we're doing by poll. It's a Zoom poll, yes or no. It's going to come up in front of you and you just click yes or no. And then
How long you can stay.
submit. So this poll is going to be open for 30 seconds. Seems good because we're almost, well, 2/3 of the way to when the poll will close. People are still voting, so you got 5 more seconds. And then we'll end the poll. And I will say that that proposal is carried. Ooh, my first proposal. That's exciting. Thanks everyone for making it relatively painless. Well, I believe we have a slide now to introduce the leadership team for our meeting. So you can see myself. I'll endeavor to lead our meeting efficiently and properly. Terry Smith is our agenda and business chair. So he's going to try to keep me on the right track as well, as is Mark Laird, the acting executive minister, who many of you will recognize as our past president, but that is not his role at this meeting. Another person who's going to help keep me on track, he may have his work cut out for him, is the parliamentarian, Fred Monteith. So thank you, Fred, for doing this job for us. He might need to keep me on the right path when it comes to the rules of order. Anne Harbridge, Rebecca Duncan, and Joyce Johnson are our worship team. And you saw Rebecca in our video, and we're going to meet Anne and Joyce later when we join them at Cape Croker for the Sacred Fire. Sue Doulaban, thank you, Sue, for taking our minutes for this meeting and being our executive assistant. Our Zoom techs are John Neff and Michelle Pettick. See, I should have checked that. Michelle, I don't know how to say your last name. What's wrong with me? So John's going to be sharing these slides. That's who's in control of that, I think, and ensuring all the presentations are ready to go. He was the one who got the video up and going for worship. Michelle's going to be working to ensure that I notice anyone who puts up their hand and that the tech runs smoothly for all the participants. I think that's her kind of main role. But they're sharing that, so you can turn to them if you need any help in the tech department. And for our chaplains, if anyone needs a chaplain for any reason throughout the meeting, we have both Kevin Steeper and Leslie Fox who have agreed to be available. I'm going to invite them to put their contact information in the chat right now if they're here. Hopefully they are. And that way you can have access to it, their contact information, as it becomes available in the chat. I see Leslie's done that. So wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm sure Kevin's will come in short order.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah, there you go. So they both put in cell phone numbers that they can be reached at. And I'm guessing probably texted too, if that's easier for some people. And Leslie's included her email address as well. And then we have our equity support person for this meeting, and that is Maggie Dieter. Maggie's also information in the chat, so that if there are any equity concerns, you can be in contact with her. And I'm going to invite Maggie to join me now so that she can lead us through the ways that we will strive to be in community together that will honor diversity and promote inclusion and equity in this space.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I don't know what I did to my screen. What a moment to shrink my screen. I think I see you. Okay. Thank you, President Jennifer. So my name is Maggie Dieter, and I'm serving at the New Hamburg United Church, and I will be your equity support person for this meeting at the fall meeting of the Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council. So there is information about equity building and what the equity monitor's role is on pages 7 and 8 of your workbook. But I thought I would just read one paragraph to you that talks about what it is that we are seeking to achieve. Equity realizes that in order to ensure fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all peoples, we need to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some people and groups. Equity moves closer to justice, and it is part of the work of the church. So this is what we're seeking to do. And as I said, you can turn to page 7-8 for more information. So there are a couple of slides that we run through at this point. Jennifer, is that correct?
It is, and the first one, the Brave slide's already up.
Okay, so something is going on with my
Yeah, sorry about
my
that.
screen. Sorry. And can you tell me which one is shown?
The Brave one is showing commitment to community safety.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is a covenant statement that I would invite us then to reflect upon at this time, and a path forward for us as we commit to building safe community. So we strive in this time of co-learning to be brave by bringing accountability, or being accountable for the impact of both our words and our silence, by reflecting on and naming our own biases, and by actively listening, by vocalizing questions that arise from our learning, and encountering new ideas with curiosity and wonder. So this is what we strive to do in this time of co-learning, as we seek to build a safe community together. Now, I believe there's also, yes, we have the vision statement from the regional councils, and I'll read through that for you. So safety, sanctuary, unconditional love. Striving to be faithful followers of Jesus in our time and place, Horseshoe Falls, Antler River Watershed, Western Ontario Waterways Regional Councils will continue to remove barriers to participation in the life and work of the Regional Council and society, committing ourselves to be open to the Spirit, resisting all forms of oppression. We welcome and celebrate people of any sexual orientation and gender identity, and all others who are marginalized. The Regional Council, staff, executive, commissions, networks, and members commit to working toward fulfilling the vision statement by A, continuing to remove barriers to participation in the life and work of Antler River Watershed, Western Ontario Waterways, Horseshoe Falls Regional Councils. B, continuing to remove barriers to participation in society. C, committing to be open to the Spirit. D, resisting oppression. E, welcoming and celebrating people of any sexual orientation and gender identity. So,
Thank you, Maggie.
There you are. So I just wanted to just say that so if there are any equity related questions or thoughts that emerge during the meeting, I would ask that you be in touch with me by email, phone, text. I'll put my contact information in the chat as soon as we are finished here. So
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maggie. That would be wonderful if you can add that information in the chat. Then anyone who would like to be in touch with Maggie can use that. Hopefully you can see the chat sometimes. that can be part of the trick too, but there Maggie has put her number and email in the chat for you to see. Okay, well, now that we've got most of the business of opening the meeting and introductions out of the way, I'd love to invite those of you who are afternoon joining your very first Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council meeting, who would like to introduce yourself, to raise your hand so that we can welcome you to our meeting. Now, if the thought of turning on your camera and talking in front of everyone is not your idea of a good time, if you put your name and where you're joining us from for this meeting in the chat, we can use that as a way to welcome you as well. But we just thought we'd like to offer this space. Normally, if we were meeting in person, we could have people jump up to the microphone and introduce themselves. But since we're on Zoom, that can happen too. Only instead of jumping up to the microphone, we just raise our hand or use the chat. So I see that Aiden has his hand raised. And I'll invite you, Aiden, to unmute yourself, and then we'll pin you or something so that you can share.
Sure. Or maybe, okay, there I am. Hi, everybody. My name's Aiden. I've just started as a student minister at Westminster United Church in Orangeville. I'm just at the beginning of my supervised ministry education. So I'm really excited to be joining all of you and to learn from all of you and work with all of you. So thanks very much for letting me participate in today's meeting. Thanks.
Wonderful, and welcome, Aiden. So good to see you here. And I wish you well in your ministry there at Westminster. Anne Edie, I see your hand is raised, so we'll pin you and you can unmute yourself and share.
All right, my name is Anne Edie, and I go to Pine River United Church. We're close to the border of Huron County, but we're just up from Amberley in Bruce County, Huron Kinloss to be exact. And we're originally a farm community, and now we're everything. We've got, our area has grown, and probably more people live at the lake or even in Kincardine like me. And I'm taking Betty Jones' place as the representative from Pine River United Church, and I look forward to seeing what WOW is all about. So thank you.
Wonderful. Welcome, Anne. I love looking up and trying to figure out where places are. And sometimes I'll describe it in the bulletin. I'll be like, it's near Kincardine or it's over by Stratford, like these little places. And so it's wonderful to have you here as the representative from Pine River.
Thank you.
Gail Clarkson. I'll see your hand up, so I'll ask you to unmute yourself and share a little bit about you.
Well, greetings, everyone. Yes, I'm Gail Clarkson. I live in Little Wee Fordwich, which was in here on Perth Presbytery. And I'm a retired diaconal minister, but doing some supportive work, supervising ministry at Calvary Zion, and some public supply and that kind of thing. So it's nice to gather and join together as we move forward in our faith journeys.
Wonderful to have you here with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I see, excuse my pronunciation, Juan Lee.
Nice to meet you. My name is Hoen Lee. So it sounds similar with Owen, H plus Hoen. And I started my new ministry here in Waterloo on the Haldimand tract. And so I'm excited to participate in this meeting and glad to see you all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, and that's wonderful. Wonderful to have you here, and I look forward to spending more time with you in your ministry there. At Waterloo, you said, right? I gotta learn to listen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm First United. I'm a new minister of First United in Waterloo.
Perfect. Good to associate which church in Waterloo. So First United. Wonderful. Thank you, Owen. Curtis.
Hello, my name's Curtis Marwood. I'm transferred from Antler River Watershed. I'm a retired minister from southwestern Ontario. And I've just moved to Tottenham, which is just north of Toronto and just on the edge of Horseshoe Falls, I think, or one of them. I'm not quite sure of the geography yet. Anyway, I've been involved recently and still am involved in solidarity with Palestinians through the United Network for Justice and Peace in Palestine and Israel, and Canadian Friends of Seville. I'm on the board of the Canadian Friends of Seville.
Wonderful. Sounds like you keep pretty busy, Curtis. Did you say Tottenham?
Tottenham.
Tottenham. So that
Just
would be
south.
on the edge of Shining Waters, I think. Yeah?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah. Wonderful to have you here, wherever, whichever regional council is next to you.
I think I'm classified as being in Western Ontario water.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too. I think that's the one that edges up right against us at Tottenham would be Shining Waters.
Yeah, it's just south of Alliston.
Yes, exactly. So you're very close to where we are right now. Okay. Did I miss anybody who put in the chat that they were introducing themselves? I don't see any more hands raised.
President Jennifer, where are you folks meeting? The chair and the other executive.
Where are we?
Oh, sorry. I was like, I understood the question, but then Mark was explaining the question and I'm like, wait, do I not understand the question? So we are right now joining from the Nottawasaga Inn.
In Nottawasaga.
In just outside of Alliston.
Awesome. Thank you,
Yes.
President Jennifer.
Thank you for clarifying that. So wonderful. We did it, and welcome. Please note that you did that perfectly. And throughout the meeting, we're going to be using, oh, here we go. So I just see in the chat, Nancy Flagel from Dundalk United Church, who's studying to become a licensed lay worship leader, has put in the chat. So welcome to Nancy as well. Wonderful. That's how we're going to use the chat throughout the meeting. We're going to use the chat function on Zoom as though it were a microphone on the floor, that if we were in person, you could jump up and introduce yourself from. And or you can come up to the microphone by raising your hand like Connie has. So I'll invite Connie to unmute and share.
Hi, I'm Connie Shield, and I'm from Belgrave United Church, Knox United Church. And Belgrave is in Huron County, close to Wingham, in between Wingham and Blythe.
Good to have you here. Welcome, Connie. Okay. So yes, wonderful and welcome. We're going to use the chat as a microphone, our hands raised as a way of coming to the microphone as well, rather than using the chat as just a place where you would have side conversations or comments throughout the meeting. And that way we kind of minimize distractions and respect those who are speaking and presenting. And speaking of presentations, we're ready for our first presentation from John Bedell, but I don't know if John is here. If he isn't, we do have a backup plan, but I'm just not sure.
President Jennifer, I don't see John online with us.
Okay. Of course, yes. We're running about 20 minutes early from where I told John he probably would be. I should have left it where I initially told him he'd be. So that may be why. I'll do introduction for John. He was planning to join us live from Saugeen First Nation. And so that may be part of, he's technically trying to do that, and that is why he sent us a backup video of his presentation, just in case he couldn't join us live. But I'll just tell you a little bit of background about him. Like most everybody, during the pandemic, I was thrust into trying to figure out how to lead worship online from the safety of our own homes. Right? Remember that? Desperate for help and guidance, I did what many do. I turned to Facebook for help. And what did I find? See that? A new group called Canadian Churches That Live Stream. And that's where I met our guest today, John Bedell. As a lifelong member of the United Church of Canada, happily retired from his 40-year career as a structural draftsman, John, maybe because God has this way of using all the gifts and skills we offer, and even those we don't, had been running a mobile live streaming service called Niagara Online Worship for several years before the pandemic started. This mobile system rotating through a dozen churches in the then Niagara Presbytery gave him the skills and the desire to create Canadian churches that live stream during the pandemic. Maybe there are some of you besides me who found their way to this group and found in John a godsend. It was in a post he made to this group that I first heard about John's work with Habitat for Humanity and what he called his reconciliation in action efforts. I hope his story will encourage us as we work towards living into right relations here in Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council. And I see he has joined the meeting. And so I will turn it over to him if he's ready. Are you ready, John?
John, do you want to unmute yourself, please? There we go.
Yep.
We're good.
How's that coming through?
That's great.
Is that okay? Okay, great. I am, as you may guess, on a build site right now. I'm actually amongst the Chippewas of Nawash First unceded First Nation, where we're building two houses. The roof trusses behind me are the ones we actually put together today. So we're underway. I thought it was particularly appropriate to send this out from the build site. So I was absolutely thrilled when Jennifer asked me to see if I'd talk about what a few of us have been doing recently on Habitat for Humanity builds on First Nations territory. And I'm especially thrilled to talk about it right now as we move towards National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And as I said, I'm at the Chippewas of Nawash First Nation with a Habitat team. We've been here all week. We'll be here tomorrow, and then we're done for the week. But it's been a wonderful build experience. So doing it from here was really happy. I'm going to start with a little bit of history first, because it's really important for context. For many years, I wanted to do a Habitat Global Village build somewhere in the world where people are not as blessed as we clearly are. It was one of those bucket list objectives that I always thought I'd get to someday. But in 2014, a good friend of mine who I'd worked with on and off for 35 years passed away suddenly and unexpectedly, only a few years older than me. So I said, to heck with waiting. I'm booking a trip right now. So that's how I ended up on my first overseas build in 2015, headed to Dawn Bantayan in the Philippines, which is an area that was devastated by Typhoon Haiyan. It was a life-altering build in more ways than I could possibly express here. But suffice to say, I was hooked on the idea of doing Habitat builds. And I followed that one up in 2016 with a build in New Delhi, India, and then 2017 in southeastern Nepal. All spectacular builds, working with great teams alongside the locals. And I probably would have continued along that path of doing annual overseas builds, but I decided to book my 2018 trip along with a family friend in memory of my dad, who had just passed away, who's the proudest of proud Canadians. So I decided to stay in Canada, and we booked a trip at Curve Lake First Nation in his memory. And that was hugely eye-opening to see what was really third world conditions here in our own country. Our team leader on that build had been with the team in the Philippines and has led teams all over the world. So he knows enough that these things take some study, and he distributed study materials before the trip, and then arranged time for us to spend with the band leadership at Curve Lake, and with the eventual homeowners who were going to inhabit the home that we were building. And all of that led us to understand the culture just a wee bit more, and empowered us to be part of the solution. Now, we've all heard the word reconciliation bantered about endlessly, but educating yourself and then spending time on First Nations land with First Nation people brings it much, much more sharply into focus. In 2019, I joined the same Habitat team leaders on a build in Chippewas of Nawash First Nation, which I'm back at now, and it was just as eye-opening. It also introduced me to the well-run, well-equipped Habitat team in this Grey Bruce region, which runs a partnership program with the First Nations called Partnership for Hope, and that organizational cooperation between the bands and Habitat in the region is one of the reasons why I keep coming back here. After that 2019 build, of course, everybody had all plans put on hold for a while because of the pandemic. But then in June of 2022, when things opened up again, I brought up a team of 8 people from around home for a day of building with the same Habitat group, but this time at Saugeen First Nation, the day before Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. That's my preference. I always like to come up here around about Indigenous Peoples Day, which falls on June 21st, just because it feels appropriate to be providing help on that day. Then in September of 2022, I joined another team on Orange Shirt Day, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, here again at Chippewas of Nawash, and another awesome experience. Sorry, I'm prattling on here about the history, but there is a real point to this. In June of this year, I brought up a team of 25, my family, friends, former colleagues, and 11 of us from my home church, which is St. John Stevensville United. 11 people from our little church was kind of remarkable when you consider we have around 40 or 50 on an average Sunday. So we came up for 2 days, and that overnight stay meant with it that we had the opportunity to share dinner and have a time to sit down and share experiences and expectations and how the build had actually met those expectations. So that's very important. These builds on First Nations territory, together with our studies leading up to the builds, have been really eye-opening. One of the study resources that I really recommend for anybody looking at joining a build in First Nations territory, or for that matter, anybody in Canada, really, if you haven't yet looked into our history with our First Nations brethren, there's an online 4 Seasons of Reconciliation course produced in collaboration with First Nations University, and it is a brilliant presentation. It's not all that long, but it packs a lot of information into it, and there's a lot of links to other information. So it is a great resource to study and learn more. A bunch of us from my church took it through the Rutherford Foundation, and some of my teammates who were headed up to the team in June took it specifically in preparation for that build. My friend and frequent Habitat team leader, Ken Rutherford, he coined a great phrase to summarize his approach to First Nations relationships on these builds, and it's the approach that I've learned to recognize as well. He calls it the 3 E's of reconciliation. Those are empowerment, experience, and education. Here in Canada, we should all start with education, of course, and there's a great deal of material out there if we just take the time. That should really start for all of us with the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. But there are also some great resources like the book, Whose Land Is It Anyway? Decolonization Handbook. And there's a collection of essays, a book called Survivors Speak, which will tear at your heart. But it's very, very important information. And of course, the 4 Seasons of Reconciliation course that I mentioned earlier. The empowerment part of that 3 E's is twofold, really. We want to empower our build teammates to go out from the build and spread the word about what they've seen and done. But we also want to empower our First Nation brethren to live their best lives. And addressing housing on First Nations territory plays a really big part in that, especially for the children who will grow up in those houses. As I said before, much of their housing is very much like a third world nation, which is simply unacceptable in this great country. For a few years, when we were coming up to this this reserve building, we built a community of 16 homes along a brand new street. So that whole community was built by Habitat teams. I think I had contact with 5 of the homes myself, which is great. But that little community has 34% of the children in this entire Chippewas and Nawash unceded First Nation. So 34% of the children are going to grow up in safe, secure housing that was provided as part of that partnership of hope between Habitat and the band. It's a wonderful thing. I can't recommend strongly enough how wonderful that is to actually help with that. And then finally, the third E is the experience part. Obviously, for me, it seems self-evident, but bears some clarifying. Working alongside First Nations people on these builds is eye-opening, but it's a really important part of putting reconciliation into action. And again, I just can't recommend that experience strongly enough. Now, there's a little bit of a qualifying note that you need to it may sound like I'm pushing it the other way, but when you go off on a First Nations build, or for that matter, really any build overseas anywhere, there's a very real danger of us feeling like the white saviors going in to help the poor natives. But that really is one of the beauties of that 3E approach. Once you start the education portion, you soon realize that the First Nation people here are not the poor relatives of our Canadian family. That's a white colonial attitude in play. Educating ourselves means recognizing that at the time settlers arrived here in Turtle Island, there were fully formed communities and nations amounting to more than 8 million people. By some accounts, many times that number. And they had lived on this land for thousands of years. We did not discover this land at all. And we certainly didn't bring civilization to the poor natives. What we gifted to them instead was broken treaties and reservations and residential schools and diseases like smallpox and measles, pollution, and so on and so on and so on. We could have and should have learned so much from them about living in balance with the land instead of trying to conquer it. But that's surely not the colonial approach. As soon as you take off the blinders and realize how far off the rails we took the relationship with our First Nations peoples, you see the need for the experience and empowerment parts of that 3E approach. To me, it helps to balance the scales of that vast history of broken treaties and so on. But there's a quote from one-time Grand Chief of the Cree Nation named Abel Bosom, and he, as looking at it from the Indigenous side out, where I look at it the other way, he put it this way. He said, "For me, reconciliation is about resetting the button. For me, it's about looking at the past, acknowledging that we made mistakes in the past in all the different sectors, and resetting that button and starting to work together." There is great wisdom in that approach. One of the things that brings me back to this particular First Nation is their level of engagement with our volunteers here is second to none. We've been up here for the week, as I said. The chief has joined us for dinner. We've had a walk in the woods with one of their elders. We did a sweat lodge last night, which was a rather moving spiritual experience. And of course, we're working alongside people from the band who are working towards their 500 hours of sweat equity that Habitat requires. So that again is a wonderful thing. So all of that, in a nutshell, is how I came to be committed to doing Habitat builds on First Nations territories in Canada. I think we all recognize the value that Habitat for Humanity brings in our own communities. And don't get me wrong, I still recommend that people chip in there as well. But there's something really special about traveling to a First Nation community to help the reconciliation efforts there. It's about putting reconciliation into action, and a lot of the things I've already talked about. But I feel like doing it the way I am. I live in Niagara Falls, so for me, it's a 3-hour drive up here, and that requires a little bit of extra investment in time and effort. Where just going around the corner and joining a habitat build is wonderful, but it just doesn't require that same level of personal investment to do that. And if you can join a multi-day build, I can't recommend that strongly enough either. It gives you more opportunities for sharing and for sharing stories and experiences, and it just adds to the impact on both the volunteers, the participants, and the community where we're working. A good friend of mine who's an experienced habitat leader taught me to create opportunities for sharing and growth. So that's an important part of the planning process. When we were up here in June for our overnight stay, I had booked the conference room at the motel where we were staying, brought in pizza and wings, and we all sat around this huge square table. So the 25 of us took turns and just shared what we were doing there, what our expectations were, and how the build was meeting those expectations. And that is profoundly moving. It's very important to create those opportunities, and I really appreciate being taught to do that, because it doesn't come naturally for me, but it is a hugely impactful part of this whole thing. So I will take a few questions afterwards, but if any of that catches your interest and you want to discuss it further off stream, I'm happy to do that. And of course, if you want to join one of my teams sometime, I'm more than happy to talk about that as well. I promise you won't regret that. This is, after all, a way to actually live out the faith that we proclaim. It truly is. I am building another large team to come up here in June of 2024, in the days before Indigenous Peoples Day. And I would gladly consider anybody who wants to join the team and come along. Habitat has been contracted by the Chippewas and Nawash unceded First Nation to build 2 homes. They'll be starting in April. So when we go up there in June, we will probably be doing construction framing, which is you make a lot of progress. You can see the progress, very tangible. It's a wonderful way to spend a couple of days and make a huge, huge impact on the community and the people that live here. So that's about it. My mouth is getting dry. I obviously have talked too long. So thank you all for taking the time to listen to this. And if there are some questions, I assume there is some time built in to have a little bit of a chat. If anybody has questions, I would be glad to do my best to address them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John. We do have a little bit of time built in for questions, and I see somebody already has their hand up. So I will invite you to unmute yourself and ask John your question.
Me?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry,
It's okay. My name is Yuni. I'm serving at Erin United Church in Erin. John, thank you very much for your tireless efforts for the First Nation people. I have the 2 questions. Do you have any First Nation workers in your group?
No, I do not. We are working alongside several of the community members, but within my group, no. We are all from outside of the community.
Okay. My second question is, do you have any plan to invite the First Nation people working together on site, because they need to know how to build a house and how to fix up their own house? So that is according to my experience. What is your plan?
Absolutely. That's actually a really good point. And that actually is, from my perspective, I leave that in the hands of Habitat themselves, because that is very much a part of their program, is training and building the skill group within their own community. So because our team of volunteers is working alongside community members as they're developing their skills, I'm not working on bringing in people from outside, but we are very much working alongside the community members, and Habitat makes a very strong point of doing exactly that. They recognize exactly why you have made that point, how important that is to build the skills. And in fact, one of the I may go on too long. When you ask me a question, I have a tendency to prattle on because this is very important stuff for me. But there's 2 houses here, and on the second one where half of my team worked today, the foreperson who's been leading that team is one of the community members who is actually has been volunteering enough that they have got her leading the team of volunteers to build the interior walls within that house. So she is very much part of that program of learning useful and marketable skills.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the question. That was a great.
Thank you, Yoonhee. That was wonderful. Are there others that have questions?
President Jennifer, there's a question in the chat. If you want to go ahead and read it out.
Roz Vincent Haven, I wondered if we could have the proper spelling of the Indigenous community that the build is happening in. And it's Chippewas of Nawash, you said?
It's Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. So it's Chippewas with EWAS, not AWAS, which is, my wife comes from Chippewa, that's spelled the other way. So it's Chippewas of Nawash, NAWASH. The actual name of the community, the Indigenous name, Neashinigming, I couldn't even hope to spell for you. I'm sorry. I was just trying to look it up, but Chippewas of Nawash, yes, that is exactly correct. What's in the chat
Therese
is exactly correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. You can see the chat, John. So
I can.
Therese
I
was
just opened it up.
kind enough to put that in the chat for us.
That's great.
All to
Thank
see.
you very
And
much.
then McCall added the link to their website.
Excellent.
President Jennifer, I have a question.
Yeah.
John, do you have contact details that we can put in the chat? An email address, a website?
For myself?
Yes, please.
Oh, absolutely. So the best contact to reach out to, and I will try and address any questions. My own email address is niagaraonlineworship@gmail.com. Niagara Online Worship, all one word, no capitals, @gmail.com. And I will address the questions or forward them to somebody that can address them. And certainly for anybody that's interested or knows people that are interested in joining a team, reach out to me, and I will be more than happy to try and help you do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody's really efficient on your chat.
That's Michelle who asked the question.
Okay, great.
I was going to ask that question too, Michelle, so you beat me to it. That's wonderful.
That is exactly correct. Exactly correct.
Okay. I'm always so thrilled when there are partnerships and we can see ways that we can work together to
absolutely
live into right relations.
It's absolutely.
So thank you so much, John, for your presentation today. I'm assuming you're on a build. Have you made them all pause while you do this presentation for us? Or is
No,
it the
actually,
end of the day?
just by coincidence, you set up the timing just beyond when we just finished cleaning up, got everything moved out, everybody has left. And I set up in a corner here with this particularly visually appealing background. So I'm sitting on a little wooden bench here right beside the building. I'm sure if anybody's driving by, they're wondering what on earth I'm doing here. But it was actually the timing. I am a very firm believer in the way that these threads that make up our life intersect in so many ways. And the way the timing worked out when you asked me to talk to this group, and I happened to be up here on the very thing that we're talking about was just a remarkable gift for me to be able to talk about this. So I really appreciate the invitation.
I'm so thankful that you put that post on the Facebook group, Canadian Churches That Live Stream, and that started this whole interaction and led to this moment. It has been wonderful to have you here, so thank you again for joining us right from the build. I'm really glad the technology all worked too to facilitate this happening.
Me too. It's jumping just a little bit, but it's acceptable enough that we managed to get through this, so that's great. So I don't see any other questions, so I can sign off here, but if anybody has any questions, by all means, email them to me. I get them virtually immediately, and I will deal with them very quickly and try and get the responses back to you.
Perfect.
Okay?
Yep, thanks again.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Okay, see you later,
John.
everybody. Hope to see you on a build one day.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So again, if anybody has any questions for John about that, his information is in the chat there, and you can write that down and be in touch with him if you would like to find out more or get yourself on one of those builds. We're at the point in the agenda for our second proposal of the afternoon. So I'm going to invite Heather Leffler and Mark Laird to, mostly just Heather, to unmute herself now to present proposal number 2 around the election of General Council Commissioners. It's found on page 34 and 35 of your workbook if you are looking for what Heather is going to be talking about. That is where you will find it. And we also presented a slide that has some information from the workbook around what the regional council might do around this proposal. So Heather, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Jennifer. I am Heather Leffler. I serve at Rockwood and Stone United Churches, and I also have the privilege of serving on the WOW Recruitment Committee with President Jennifer and Rebecca Duncan. And so this is significant for us in the work that we are seeking to do for you in the Regional Council. I wanted to start by saying some of you have seen many elections of commissioners to General Council, different conferences, different presbyteries, and in the last for the last General Council in a Regional Council. Others of you, this is a first-time thing, so I'm going to try and share information that will help both groups kind of visualize what we're talking about. In the past, I came from Hamilton Conference, and we would elect sometimes 36 people. There needed to be a balance of lay and ordered and so on, and we would do these elections on the floor of the conference. In the new system that we have, there are far fewer people being elected. We have 5 commissioners that we'll elect, plus a number that we don't know yet, based on the size of our region in comparison to the other regions across the country. So as you can see, it's a much smaller group than would have been elected in the past. In the General Council is coming up in July 2025 in Calgary. It's the 45th General Council. We need, by the manual, to have our commissioners elected in the spring of 2024 so that they can prepare for the meeting. In 2020, when we elected commissioners to the 44th General Council, we were trying to elect people with diversity in mind, and also with meeting our manual requirements of having a 3rd lay and a 3rd ministry personnel. The other requirement of the manual is that people live in the region when they're elected and when they serve at General Council. So we can't elect somebody that's outside the region, and they have to remain in the region when they're serving. And so to balance all of these things is very challenging, and that at that regional meeting, it was done through a series of ballots, and it was complicated to make sure that we had tried to get diversity first and then other people. And we know that coming into 2024, we're going to be in a region with Antler River Watershed and Horseshoe Falls. There will be people in person and online, which wasn't the case last time. And our staff will be serving all three regions. So to try and change ballots, put new names on them and so on, just seems incredibly complex and lots of room for challenges. So it's really important because we want to have diversity of people in general council. We want people that come from different places and different perspectives, some new folks, some folks that have been long time serving. We want to balance male and female. We want to have our third of ministry personnel, third of lay. So to coordinate all of those things, how do we do that well? And also we know that you no longer have to be a member of the regional council to serve on general council. So we would be bringing people in, may potentially have people's names that we have never seen on a Zoom call, we've never seen at a regional council meeting, and how to lift their gifts and skills they bring along with those that also serve and ministry personnel or people on committees that might be sort of higher profile, along with people that come and offer wonderful different perspectives that we wouldn't have if we were just voting in person with a ballot. And so what we're hoping to do is to carefully discern who puts their name forward and provide a slate that will serve both the general council and our region well. So thanks to John for the slide. What we might do, the regional council might agree to close nominations for commissioners to General Council 45 as of midnight on April 15th, 2024, to publicize that deadline in advance on the website and newsletters, in registration materials, in congregations, so that people know they are eligible to, I guess I should say that anybody that puts their name forward must, as a layperson, must be a member of a community of faith. To direct the recruiting team authorized by the spring 2023 meeting and appointed by the executive to review the nominations with a view to ensure a diverse cohort of commissioners and alternates who bring both experience and new energy to the role and who are committed to the preparation and online prior requirement for general council, and to recruit nominees to address gaps in the representation. And then the regional council agrees to vote on the slate as a whole at the spring 2024 regional council meeting. So that's what I have to share, President Jennifer, if there's questions.
Thank you, Heather. So this is the point in our conversation where we would have entertain questions for clarification. So if you have a question for clarification, not to speak for or against the proposal, but just to clarify what this proposal means, then I invite you to raise your hand. And when you begin to speak, if you could remember to identify yourself, that would be perfect. So I'll ask Uni.
I am Uni again. I'm serving Erwin United Church in Erwin. Heather, thank you very much for your hard work too. I'm learning every day about that. Wow. I have two questions. So how many commissioners are you going to plan to elect?
We don't know, Uni. There will be 5 for sure. And then the remainder of the commissioners to make the total amount will be divided across the region. So we'll get some additional number. And I apologize, I don't know the number from the last general council, but if somebody does know that, it might be helpful to give us a perspective.
Okay, this is volunteering work, right? It is not a paid position. Okay, thank you.
So I just recognize Mark because I think he has the answer to the question of how many went last time.
Yeah, I believe it was 113.
And we might note that our president goes as well by virtue of the position.
Yeah, some of those spots are designated based on the role the person plays at the regional council. Doug, do you have a question for clarification?
Doug Hayward, Cedar Hill United Cambridge. Heather, you mentioned early in your presentation that all three regions are together on this, or each of the three regions has 5.
Each of the 3 regions. We are together for the meeting, which is what I was referring to for the complexity, but we vote in our separate meeting time in Port Elgin. We will vote with the people present and online for Western Ontario Waterways. Thanks for clarifying that, Doug.
Yeah, that's an important clarification. Yes, we have our own commissioners to general council that will be naming at a meeting where the other regional councils will be there. But we'll separate out for our own meeting times to make those individual regional council decisions. Are there any other questions for clarifications? Brent. You need to unmute yourself as you introduce yourself, Brent.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Thanks, Jennifer. It's Brent Kaslik from Centralia. Heather, can you just explain a little bit more for the people present, the diversity, how that's going to be? So many women, so many men, so many males, so many female, so many whatever. Can you just expand a bit on that for them? It's difficult, I know.
So it's not a formula. But what we would do is when we see the number of positions we have, we would first of all make sure that we had a third clergy and a third lay, like minimum. We would make sure that we had a good balance between male and female, and then we would look at we have in our governance handbook some guidance around including people who are young, people who identify by diversity through gender and so on. So people self-identify as diversity when they put in their expression of interest, and then we would seek to make sure that that slate included people from those various groups.
Thanks, Heather. I think it just helps clarify the struggle that your group is going to have in trying to get a balance.
And the almost impossibility to do that in a vote.
Correct.
I see Roz Vincent Haven ask if retired ministry personnel are eligible to be elected, and that yes, they would be eligible to put their name forward.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So here's just a question for clarification from me then. So when a retired ministry personnel is elected, they fall under order of ministry in their figuring out a balance.
If they're ordered ministers, I think they're I would need a clarification about designated lay ministers because I'm not up to date of where we are in that, but definitely ordered ministers would be considered ministry personnel.
Yeah. Any other questions for clarification? All right, are there any?
Andrea Allen's got a question. Does that mean 13 plus 5? No, it means 5 and possibly up to 13 or 12 or whatever the number the general council gives us. So it's not a large group.
Right, compared to what used to go from conferences. Yeah. It's a lot smaller.
And sorry, President Jennifer, I was just corrected that we had 15 last time. Plus alternates. But also just to note that things happen and we had to use our alternates in all 3 of the Southern Ontario Regional Councils. And I think in 2 of them, and I think in 1 of them, we ran out of alternates as well. So just as information.
Okay. All right, seeing no other hands up for questions for clarification, are there any suggestions for changes or things that you would like to alter in the proposal of what we might do. So this is your chance to say, like, oh, if we said we would make the deadline April 15th, someone might say, you know what, I really feel like the deadline should be April 21st. Like those kind of changes to the proposal is what this gives us an opportunity to do. And if you have a suggestion or a change that you feel like would make this proposal stronger for our regional council to act on, then raise your hand, just the same as for questions of clarification. And I just see that Uni has put a question in the chat as well. In terms of including diverse groups, do you have specific action plan to elect how many racialized, I'm assuming, commissioners?
No, we would be balancing all the diversity. Sometimes you have someone that carries, identifies a number of different perspectives that they bring. And so, and especially when we don't know the number, we have to say, well, we're going to have one youth and one racialized person and one binds, I think, us in a way that doesn't then allow us to take into consideration other things that are very important, like experience and skills and gifts.
And then Mark wanted to know, she may have missed it, but the dates and location for the next general council. So that would be August 2025. And it's out west, Calgary. August 7th through 12th in 2025 in Calgary. Do we know how many racialized commissioners we had at the last general council?
I'm sorry, I don't.
They self-identify. So, because they self-identify, then it's not like we're keeping some kind of a list on it. So we don't, sorry, Uni. And how much time between the closing of nominations and the vote? So right now in the proposal, we are suggesting that the regional council might close nominations April 15th, 2024, and the slate would be presented at our regional council spring meeting, which is, this is a good time to plug the dates, May 24th, 25th, 26th of 2024. So it would give the recruitment team a little over a month if they, if we didn't receive a lot of expressions of interest, to start recruiting people. It's the way I see it.
And also the staff to put together handbooks and all the other work that goes in.
President Jennifer, we've got Bruce Dixon with a question.
Yes, thank you. Bruce?
Bruce Dixon, Dublin Street United in Guelph. Heather, to the proposal itself, I mean, it's hard to know the date thing, when's best. I mean, I like the idea of doing it before the spring gathering. I think that's good. I think one of the challenges, and this has always been a challenge, have been through this many times over the years, people don't know what they're doing a year out. People don't always know if they're going to be in the same pastoral charge. Sometimes they don't want to take the spot for someone else who's never been there before. I mean, and now we're trying to help balance who's there. And I think that's I appreciate the questions that people have asked, like, how do we decide what is that balance? What should it look like? How do we know what's the best thing? So I guess I think the challenge for us as a region, I would just say that whatever we say, how do we encourage people to put their names forward? In the past, and I'll just say this is what happened at conferences, someone would come up and tap someone on the shoulder and go, Heather, I think you would be great at this because you keep asking good questions here on the floor of conference. I think I can't underestimate how important that is for us to look at our neighbors or if we ourselves feel that we're being called to go to let someone to tap us on the shoulder or do something about that, because that seemed to be the best. That's how we grew the numbers to 36 at conferences, is because all through the meeting, someone was tapping someone on the shoulder saying, maybe you should go. I think that's the problem a year out. I mean, I don't have a solution to that. I know we have to do it a year out, but we really do have to help people feel that their voices are important and all of that. So I like the idea of what you suggested about a deadline, but folks, we're going to have to figure out how we tap people on the shoulder to consider that before the 15th of April or whatever date. I think it was the 15th is what I remember. So that's my thought to that.
Thanks, Bruce. It's really helpful to remind folks that we need to encourage each other to put our names forward, because often we sit here and say, well, what are the gifts that I would bring? Even if I really like to go, I'm not sure I should be the one. So when somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, please consider, that's helpful. The other thing to keep in mind is that Mark mentioned this, but my first general council I attended, I was an alternate, and I don't know of a general council that alternates didn't go. So if you would like to be considered and you think you might be moving, still put your name forward, trust the spirit. And, there are alternates if you are not able to continue. Mark, this is a question for you. My sense, but I didn't check this, is that this is not like the general councils of the past, where you got the workbook at the end of June and you met with the general council in July. I expect the general council will begin meeting in that year before. The last general council, they did lots of online work prior to the general council and then met online for the general council. This one we know will be in person, but this is a commitment to a significant amount of work before. So it's not just a commitment to the dates.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to apologize because I'm just like glancing over and looking back to the screen, and in the chat, I saw a double E at the end and said uni, but it was actually Hohen that was asking those questions around the racialized commissioners. And he just had another question asking if someone could check the number / percentage of racialized people among previous commissioners. Do you mean from this regional council or just in general that went to the general council meeting, Owen? We probably can't get the overall general council ones, but we might be able to find that before the end of our 3-day meeting. Oh, perfect. Good, Owen. Yeah. So we'll look into that and just see what we can find out for you. And again, I'm so sorry about just like not reading that properly in the comments and saying your name, the wrong person. I just was like not even picturing you at all. So I want to recognize Colleen has her hand up. If you could introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Colleen Lowry, pronouns she and her, from Camp Manessaton, located near Goderich, Ontario. And I am thinking about this question because I'm thinking about it seems what's underneath all this question is how do we really increase our diversity in terms of our representation? And I know that when I think about the young people that I work with, what they're lacking is support going into such a huge commitment. And I think that's also going to be true of folks who are in marginalized communities in general, because those folks from any marginalized community, be they queer, be they trans, be they racialized, be they non-binary, be they young, because in their church that's definitely a thing, be they someone with a disability, the amount of extra work that comes with going to general council is the thing that prohibits the diversity at general council, because they're doing the extra work of just living their lives, or navigating the systems within the church within their marginalizations. And I'm wondering, how could our regional council And perhaps this is something for longer discussion down the line and not an answer that we're going to find today. I'm not at all asking this of Heather right now. But how can our regional council create a really supportive environment to enable folks with various marginalizations, perhaps overlapping marginalizations, to participate in something that is an extra like part-time job in and of itself. And I think that would be like the biggest help in terms of increasing diversity from our region to general council.
Thanks, Colleen. That's really helpful. I've made a note for the recruitment group to have a conversation about that as a beginning, and we won't have all the answers ourselves, but we won't let it slide off. Jennifer, I think Kathy Bunston has asked, how does someone put their name forward? That will be through an expression of interest on the WOW website. When we're preparing, you'll receive a notification that nominations or putting your name forward is open, and you would do it on the website.
Okay.
Same as we do for commissions and executive.
Yes, that would be our hope. Okay, so I didn't hear any suggestions for changes. So I'm wondering if, having had some more conversation around it, if we're ready to make a motion, and then we can engage in further debate on the wisdom of carrying that motion. So Heather, are you prepared to make that motion?
I was going to move it, but I realized that being on the recruitment committee, that may sound like I'm telling myself what to do. So it
Totally,
might be
yes.
better
You have a
someone else.
conflict. Yeah. All right. Can I have someone who would be willing to move this proposal? This can just be off the floor. Judy Zubrick, I see your name, your hand is up, and then Roz Vincent Haven, are you you're for seconding the motion? Okay, thumbs up from Roz. So we'll have to make the motion and Roz second the proposal. Do you need me to read it again? I think John will put it up on the, debate. Yes. Are there anyone that would like to speak to this? Sorry.
Just give me a second.
If you'd like to speak to this motion, you can start raising your hand. So I just need to ask for permission from the court to extend the time, because we are at 5:31 right now, and 5:30 was our closing time for this session of our regional council meeting. So do I get permission via vote or?
Reactions, and then use the green.
Okay, so go into reactions and just use the green check mark if you are okay with extending the time so that we can finish with this proposal before we break for supper. An X if you are not, if you would like to break now and come back to this after supper. Yes. So I'm seeing that you are all doing this very quickly, and that's wonderful. And I'm seeing a large majority in favor of continuing this and finishing up before supper time. And seeing we'll say 5 minutes. Okay. All right. So thank you very much for that permission to extend a little bit longer. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this proposal? Just raise your hand and we'll recognize you before we vote. Seeing no hands and seeing nothing in the chat, I will ask for the question. And we'll have 30 seconds to respond to this poll that you should see in front of you with a yes or a no. We've got 5 more seconds for those of you who haven't voted. The poll has now ended, and I will name this proposal carried. Thank you very much, Heather, for helping us work through that proposal, and for everyone with your questions and suggestions. That's really helpful for the recruitment team, of which I am also a part, as we move forward in this work, and our commitment to it. So appreciate that very, very much. Okay, so I just want to remind that the deadline for new business is at 9 p.m. tonight. Terry's going to put his, there is a slide that has Terry's email, but he can put it in the chat as well. So you can just like click on it if you wanted to send something to Terry or Mark, if you have new. If we end up, even if we end up getting done early, you still have until 9 o'clock to submit any new business that you might wish to add. And now I invite you to remain muted, but join with me in singing Grace for our supper. It is our prayer that even as we eat in our separate tables, we'll remain connected to one another and come back together at 7 p.m. Let us sing verse 3 of our meeting anthem, We Are One. We are one as we feast, peace becomes the sign in the bread and the wine. There's a sense of love divine. We are one as we come, as we feed, we are fed, and we feel God's refreshing grace as we meet at table in this place. May you feel God's refreshing grace in this break, and we'll see you back at 7 p.m. I hope that you were able to enjoy a bite to eat and a bit of a rest. I am your president, Jennifer Irving, and I pray that we are inspired tonight through our discussion and that our hearts and minds are open to the possibilities when we listen to one another and seek ways to work together for the good of all. Just a couple of things to draw to your attention as we join back in together. Our chaplains are Kevin Steeper and Leslie Fox, and I'll invite them to put their contact information in the chat again for those who weren't here earlier, so don't have access to our earlier chat. If anyone would like to reach out to Kevin or Leslie, they're going to put their phone numbers and maybe emails as well in the chat. Also, a reminder that our equity support person for this meeting is Maggie Dieter, and she will add her contact information to the chat as well. If you have any comments or concerns around equity in our meeting, you can reach out to Maggie with those. Just a little information for our retirees who may have been wondering when we were going to recognize them at this meeting. When the pandemic moved all our meetings online and changed pretty much everything we would normally do, in Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council, the decision was made to honor our retirees at our fall meeting and our jubilans at our spring meeting. It was all online anyway, and we couldn't be together, so that seemed like a good way to honor both. However, when we were in person at the spring meeting, we became aware that honoring our retirees in our online meeting rather than an in-person meeting took away from the ways that we could recognize that milestone in their ministry. As we were planning for this meeting, we decided that we wanted to return to honoring those retiring from active ministry to our spring meeting so that we could do it in person. We thought this was especially significant as the spring of 2024 will be a tri-regional meeting with the moderator in attendance. So it is that we hope to work together with Antler River Watershed and Horseshoe Falls Regional Councils to ensure everyone who's retired in 2023 and 2024 will be recognized and honored fully at our in-person meeting. If you have any questions or suggestions for how we might do so, you can feel free to reach out to me. And now I want to take a moment to welcome those who are joining our regional council meeting for the first time, who may have missed the afternoon session because of other commitments. If there's anyone for whom this is your first meeting with the Ontario Waterways Regional Council, either as ministry personnel or a lay representative, I invite you to raise your hand so that you can be spotlighted and introduce yourself, and we can welcome you to our meeting. But if the thought of turning on your camera and talking in front of everyone isn't your idea of a good time, you can put your name in the chat and where you're joining us from for this meeting, and we can use that to welcome you. If you haven't already done so, yes. Yeah, you don't need to introduce yourself again if you were here earlier and you did so at the beginning of our afternoon session, but just anyone who might have been not able to come earlier and is here for the first time this evening. This is your opportunity to be welcomed into this space and into this community.
Rita Horton, Centennial United Church in Stainer. I'm the lay rep, and I was unable to be here for most of the afternoon meeting due to other responsibilities.
Wonderful to have you here, Greta. This isn't your first meeting, though.
No.
You're an experienced lay rep for these meetings. Greta Horton is a lay rep from the congregation where I serve in ministry at Centennial United in Stainer. So nice to see you here, Greta.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Andrew, I see your hand is up. Would you like to unmute yourself and share? You can introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Hyde, and I serve as the Ecumenical Chaplain at the University of Guelph, and I'm chair of the Discipleship and Justice Commission. And I apologize, but activities on campus kept me away from the meeting this afternoon, but good to be with you all today.
Thank you, Andrew. And this isn't your first meeting either. You were our Zoom community person at our spring meeting when we had the hybrid meeting, and we appreciated your work there. Well, welcome to all. I hope that you have all had time to at least glance through your workbook. Maybe we could put a link to the workbook in the chat for those who still haven't found it, if anybody hasn't found it, because you'll find information on this next agenda item on pages 16 to 19 of the workbook. And I'm going to invite Mark Laird and Beth Kerr to lead us through the process we'll be using tonight to go deeper into the tri-regional evaluation that was done by Jenny Stevens and Bill Allen in the spring.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm going to start this part, and then I'll invite Beth to join in and kind of explain the process of what we're going to do, and I'm kind of explaining how we got here. So I'm Mark Laird, acting executive minister for Western Ontario Waterways, Antler River Watershed, and Horseshoe Falls. When I'm not in this role, I'm serving Drayton United Church. So as we know, there was the tri-regional evaluation that went out over the course of last year and was then compiled by Jenny and Bill. Lots of people were asked to fill it in. It would have been via emails, and they had different groups that they met with as well. And so what we're wanting to look at today is the executive had talked about how are we going to respond to some of the recommendations that came out of the report that Bill and Jenny did for us. And so one of the thoughts was, the idea that came forward was to do the process that we had tonight, that we're going to follow through tonight, to be able to engage the membership of the regional council in this way. It's hard to have 108 people have a conversation all at once. So we will be going into breakout rooms, and Beth's going to explain that in a little bit. One thing that I did want to point out is that some of the recommendations that were brought forward in the report have already started to be taking effect. Some of those you will be able to see in this meeting. Even as President Jennifer had just mentioned with the retirees, going back to honoring retirees in the spring when we're in person, because we can be in person again, is part of one of the concerns that was raised in there. As well, if you've looked at your agenda, you'll see that later on in the meeting, I believe tomorrow, there is a time for discussion in breakout rooms, so that people can raise things that maybe didn't have a chance to be raised at the meeting and want to have further discussion so that that can be brought forward. There were also recommendations around different ways of communicating, and one of the ideas was that the website is not necessarily as user-friendly as we would like, as it uses a lot of church lingo, and that might not be familiar with everyone. So that, in some ways, was an easy one, and an easy quick fix is that that has already happened is if you go to the website, which is WOWRC, so it's Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council, United Church of Canada.ca, and there are some tabs at the top. And one of the things that people commented on was that it's hard to know, even as we talked about with the general council commissioners, of where do I sign up for that? So under the ministry tab, there is now something that says just, I want to volunteer. And so if you click on that, then it brings people to the expression of interest forms I'll give them a very quick access to being able to volunteer, because saying, here's the expression of interest, people might not understand what that language is. So there have been things that we have been trying already to try to address some of those things. And tonight is an opportunity to have breakout rooms that we can get some more ideas and more discussion that can be brought forward. So I think that's all I need to say, unless you think there's something I missed, Beth. But if you want to unmute yourself and come on in, then you can pick it up. Oh, and your scarf is back. That's lovely.
My scarf is back. Everybody gets to see the cat. She really likes to be on TV. Yeah, so we're going to go into self-selected breakout groups. So that means that you get to pick which topic you're interested in. There's lots of great, and these are sort of the topics that we identified that we thought more input would be useful around, and that would value from a in-depth kind of conversation about how we might address these topics raised in the evaluation. So there are 9 breakout rooms. Connecting communities of faith to the region, communicating with communities of faith, support to communities of faith who are searching for a new minister. They're also in the chat there, I see, which is helpful. Networking communities of faith, enhancing health, joy, and excellence in ministry practice, connecting with retired ministry personnel, supporting justice work in communities of faith. What is our purpose and how well are we living it out? And equipping the church for such a time as this. So those are the groups, and there is more detail about what each group will be, like the starting questions for each group that is in your workbook. And in your chat, I saw that they just posted those groups again. So give some thought to which group you.
Beth, you just unmuted.
Sorry, have you heard most of what I said? Okay, so somehow I must have hit a key. So, okay. So a couple of things just to keep in mind in these conversations. We'd like to have them be as forward focused as possible. And so while it can be really important to identify what a concern is and to flesh it out so we understand what the challenge is, we're also hoping that these conversations will think about what are some of the possible solutions or even the beginning steps to arriving at a solution to these problems. What action could we take? The second is that the intention is these are brainstorming conversations. So, if you want to have a conversation about what would we do if we had $1 million, go for it. Not because we have $1 million to spend on any of these topics, but because that conversation might spark the gem of something that does yield something that is helpful and practical. Sometimes when we remove the constraints of trying to make sure at our first go that the idea is implementable, we actually get out of our boxes. The third is that we are the region. So the region is not just the staff, it's not just the commissions, it's not just the executive. And so some of the ideas generated will likely be relevant to all three of those groups. And we're looking forward to getting that input and to hearing what people are thinking. But the region is all of us. And so some of the ideas generated might require new people to get involved in different ways than we are currently involved. So if you are passionate about it, is there something you can do to make it a reality? That whole idea that we all should be always listening for call, is there some way that your gifts and your passion meet this particular need? And what do you have to offer? The fourth is to stick to your topic. I don't know about you, but I could go to half a dozen of these quite happily and enjoy having a conversation about those topics. But we would like to have some input on each of these topics. So pick one and trust that the other people who are having a conversation about the other topic that you're also passionate about will give us the depth we need on that. And then if your conversation has generated a lot of ideas, but there's a sense that one or two of them are ones that have more energy. I know that part is maybe the hardest part to suss out in an online conversation, is which ideas get people excited. But if that is true, if you can say, actually, we have these 10 ideas and number 3 is the one that we're really energized about. If you could also flag that in your notes, because it's useful to know where to start amongst the ideas. And finally, have fun. Enjoy having a conversation with some other people from the region about how we structure our life and what we're doing together in our shared ministry. Each group will have a facilitator. We do have 9 facilitators. Each group needs a recorder. About half of the groups have a recorder already. The other half, your facilitator's first question is going to be, can somebody take notes? It is not our intention to have a whole group report back, but it is our intention that all of those notes will be collated. They'll all come to me. I will collate them all, and then we'll fan them back out to the people who they are relevant to, so that all of your ideas don't go into Never Never Land. But because we want to have in-depth conversations, if we tried to report back on them, it would take 9 hours. And we don't all want to be on Zoom for 9 more hours tonight. Any questions before we go into breakout rooms, or things that I forgot to say? Okay, somebody are putting what they would like. What you just need to know what number it is, because the breakout rooms will be on offer and you actually get to self-select your breakout room.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, so Wonder, your hand is up if you would like to ask your question.
Oh, thank you. Just a quick one. I wanted to ask, can I migrate from one room to the other? Because I think I've seen quite a number of topics of interest there.
I don't think so. I think you just have to pick one for this conversation. And yeah, I think we're all in the same boat. There's lots of really exciting topics, and we just have to do one tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Beth, I don't, it's Greta, and I don't have a copy of them in front of me, the list. Can you just quickly go over the list so I can just roughly...
I'll read it one more time. So everybody, now that you know what we're doing, think about where you want to go and remember the number. So if you would like to talk about connecting communities of faith to the regional council, you're number 1. If you would like to talk about communicating with communities of faith, you're number 2. If you would like to talk about support to communities of faith searching for a new minister, you're number 3. If you would like to talk about networking communities of faith with one another, you're number 4. If you would like to talk about enhancing the health, joy, and excellence in ministry practice, you're number 5. If you would like to talk about connecting with retired ministry personnel, you're number 6. If you would like to talk about supporting justice work in the communities of faith, you're number 7. If you would like to talk about what is our purpose and how will we know we are living it out, you're number 8. And if you'd like to talk about the changing times we're living in, equipping the church for such a time as this, you're number 9. And you have an hour. I see a question in the, so in small groups, you have an hour.
Excellent. Yes.
Unless
If you
that's changed.
are, no, that is exactly what we have, 60 minutes. If you are, like, if you wish you could be in 2 groups and you have lots of thoughts on several different groups, whatever question you have lots of thoughts and you'd like to make comments on, but you obviously can't go to more than one group tonight, feel free to write those comments down yourself and share your Mark. You can email Mark with comments and thoughts from any of the other groups. Don't let this limit you, but for the purposes of our sharing time tonight, we thought we'll just get a really in-depth of each of these points with one group doing the brainstorming and the talking and the thinking about how we can go deeper and do better as a regional council, really. I wanted to just highlight for people that Beth Kerr is a member of the executive. And so in her role on the executive has designed this process for us to use this evening. So thank you so much for that, Beth.
You're
and I
most welcome.
believe, I may be wrong, but I believe when you get to self-select the breakout rooms, it's not, the number won't just be there. It'll also have like a little description.
Yes. Also, but we did have to shorten some of the titles.
Right.
It only takes 50 characters.
Right. It only takes 50 characters. So some of the titles may be shortened, but I mean, we've gone through it a couple of times. So hopefully you'll be able to figure out from the shortened title, it'll be the number that we've said, and then a shortened title to give you an idea of what it is.
F instead of community of faith.
Right. So we may have COF instead of community of faith written out. Okay. So do you feel ready and prepared to go into breakout rooms and spend the next 60 minutes there? I don't see anyone that says, no, don't send me yet. So I'm going to invite our tech support to invite you to self-select your breakout rooms.
Okay, President Jennifer, I'm going to open all the rooms. You're going to see an invitation that pops up on your screen. Please select the room that you would like, and it goes from 1 to 9, as Beth described. So I'm going to open these rooms now. Here we go.
But that just makes it much easier, I think, for people to find the email and to get it sent. And I ended up being one of the facilitators in the groups, and we had a very fruitful conversation. So I really do hope that everyone else has as well. And just a reminder, you can find my email on the website, but it is also for all of our staff people. So not the president, but for the regional council staff, emails are first initial, last name @united-church.ca. They're all available on the website. There it is. Michelle is amazing. Got put in right away. So it's pretty simple. If you do need to find someone, as long as you know their name, you know their email address. So yeah, please send me your responses. And again, if you really were interested in multiple groups and really had something that you wanted to input into another group, feel free to send that, and we'll try our best to collate that with everything else when we send them to the appropriate people for helping to make the way forward on these different pieces. I will pass it back to you, President Jennifer, unless Beth has something she wants to add to that.
Nope. Thank you, folks, for your conversations, and I look forward to reading the notes.
I look forward to Beth reading the notes as well, instead of me.
Wonderful. Yes. So thank you so much for taking the time and investing this energy in these conversations around our future. So again, we're asking that feedback be shared with Mark, and his email's in the chat. But then Mark's going to be sending it to Beth, who is going to be doing the reading of those comments and ensuring that each of the commissions and executive and staff receive that which pertains to them. So this won't be lost. It will be reviewed and decisions made together. You may at some point in the future see a proposal right back here at another regional meeting that comes out of these conversations and that lives into our future together as a regional council. So I'm just really looking forward to seeing all that comes out of these conversations tonight, and so thankful for your ability to invest this time and energy into this. And I do hope that your spirits were fed and that you are feeling hopeful for the future. So as we come back together after these meaningful conversations, I want to remind everyone again that the deadline for new business is at 9 o'clock tonight. So this is just to ensure that we can deal with any new business tomorrow and save the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation for that reconciliation work that is ours to do as the United Church of Canada and the Western Ontario Regional Council within the United Church of Canada. So we want to just be really intentional about what work we're doing on Saturday, which is why we set that deadline for new business tonight at 9. I also want to point out that we will be having time tomorrow for conversation around the meeting and things that are coming up for people, around how things are being handled and what we're doing. And we're hoping that these sharing times will be a venue for bringing items to the forefront that might not otherwise qualify as new business, but are important to raise. And so we are going to be having time tomorrow for those conversations. Yeah, like if you happen to want us all to wear Blue Jays like Mark is, to join us together in community, like we talked about in our proposals video that probably not many people watched. I have to go on YouTube and see how many people proposals video that we did about what proposals are about and when to make them. I wanted to highlight that for Sunday morning worship, the link to join worship at Centennial United Church for the Worldwide Communion on Zoom is the same as this meeting link. So if you wanted to join my church for the Worldwide Communion service that I'm going to be leading from there, you can use this meeting link and join us on Zoom. If you want to watch the worship service live on YouTube, you just have to go to the YouTube channel for Antler River Watershed, Horseshoe Falls, and Western Ontario Waterways Regional Councils to find it. So we couldn't do a scheduled video for that morning worship because we're live streaming it from Zoom. So it just makes the key for that at the moment you do it or something like that. I sound all techie, but I'm not really. But anyway, so you just like the link that we could put a link in the chat now for our YouTube channel. If you aren't already subscribed to it, you should subscribe to the YouTube channel for our regional council. Lots of videos are posted on there, like the one about proposals that Mark and I did. Recruitment videos are on there. Videos of previous regional council meetings, the video of this regional council meeting, those are all on our YouTube channel. So you can look for those there if we have the link there in the chat, and you can look for the Sunday morning worship there as well. And I'll also just mention, I'm wearing my orange shirt today and I'm going to wear it throughout the regional council meeting. If you would specifically like to wear an orange shirt on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on Saturday, that would be welcome, and we invite you to do so. Before we move on, are there any questions or comments? Next up in our agenda is taking a moment to remember Reverend Elizabeth Pramsa with our in memoriam and honor the life cycle changes in our communities of faith. So I'll invite John to share the video around that.
Western Ontario Waterways Regional Council, in memoriam. We honor our friend and colleague who guided the church with her living. Reverend Elizabeth Pramsma. Born in Castlegore, County Tyrone, Northern Ireland, Elizabeth's first charge as a student minister was in Saskatchewan. As one of the first women in ministry ordained by the UCC, she was a trailblazer. Elizabeth faithfully served at Highland Road United in Kitchener for 8 years. In retirement, she provided pulpit supply to a number of congregations. We give thanks for the life and ministry of Reverend Elizabeth Pramsma. Community of Faith Life Cycle Changes. Disbandment, Bluevale United Church, with thanks for their legacy and faithful service. Amalgamation, Angus United Church and Grenfell United Church, amalgamated as Grenfell United Church. Many blessings as these communities of faith continue their ministry together.
Let us pray. God of grace, who stays with us even in the midst of change and chaos, loss and grief, we come before you this night searching for your grace. Give us hope in a future, however transformed, that still centers the sacred and holy and awesome you. May we find that sacred as we honor the sacred fire on this holy night. Amen. So, at this time, we're going to be able to watch a video of our worship team, Anne, Rebecca, and Joyce, and the keeper of our sacred fire that has been burning as we have been meeting here tonight, as they share about the sacred fire and share in worship. So at the close of this worship, I would invite each of you to take the time that you need at the sacred fire and then leave. So this is our last chance to do announcements or anything like that, because I want to just honor that sacred moment that we are going to experience. Our worship team has just traveled from Cape Croker to Badgeros so that they could sign in and share this video with us and of the moment that they had earlier this evening at Cape Croker. And so I would ask for your blessing on our evening tonight, and also remind people that we will meet back here as a regional council meeting tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock again for an hour-and-a-half session, and then a break for supper, and then another 2 hours in tomorrow evening.
Bonjour. Imkibanas, Dishnakas, Gigo, and Dodum. Omashquego, Nuno, Harawapaskat, and Dojaba, Anishinaabe, and Dao. I introduce myself. I say hello. How is everybody? And my name is Thunderbird. I'm Fish Clan. My ancestors are from Omashquego, Nuno, also known as James Bay Cree, up from Attawapiskat. I grew up in the cities, in the urbanized areas, but now I live my life, you know, traveling to beautiful places. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the sacred fire that we have here. We have it all constructed and ready. We have also our bundles laid out. These bundles are very important. They help us. They help with this lighting of this fire. You know, when we do traditional fires, there's certain ways that we like to have things. You know, when we come into a place for any fire, any ceremony, we show respect to Mother Earth. We want to make sure that things look better than they were when we leave. So we never want to leave a mess, and we never want to leave anything behind. So everything you'll see here, when this fire is done, it'll be like we were never here. So these are very important teachings that we have to remember. We're trying to take care of not only Mother Earth, but the water, the skies, everything. So all of this laying around here is what's helping us do this work for this fire. These sacred fires, if they have significance in the way that they're built. It's very important to the Anishinaabe people, to Indigenous people, the way that we construct these fires and the way that we start them. You know, we put in our prayers, and we put in our good intentions when we're coming. The person that's lighting this fire, you know, today it's going to be myself, and it's important that no matter what I have going on in my life, no matter how many stressors, how much I want to scream or cry or, you know, laugh or joyful, all these things, I have to put aside any struggles that I'm having to come here in a good intention, in a good way, to make sure that I'm lighting this fire so that all these prayers, that all of the people that want this fire, it's being heard of. So I want everyone to know as well, because they're not here physically, this fire already has our sacred tobacco, a sama. Sama is in here that's been passed to us to put in here for the prayers. So whenever you guys are having worship or meetings or anything, all of your thoughts and your intentions of good are going to come through this fire. You don't physically have to place that tobacco in that fire. We've done that for you already. That's our role as the fire keepers, as the Indigenous people. You know, we try to make this so that we can come forward in a good way. You know, we want to work together. We've been divided for a long time, but today this fire is going to bring us together as one. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful experience. I'm honored to be here. I'm sure many people know starting fires the good old fashioned way, you know, a little bit of gasoline, quick lighter or a torch. Today, we don't do that. We're not gonna do that. This fire is very special. We like to acknowledge my brother in the background that chopped this wood up to have it this way. You know, Billy Bannock. You know, I appreciate the work that he did out there chopping to ensure that all these prayers and good things are going up to Creator. Because once we get this spark going and that smoke goes, all your thoughts, your intentions of what everybody wants, that smoke is going to be brought up to Creator, to God, to Jesus, to Allah, whoever, whatever somebody wants to believe in, it's their choice. That smoke is that representation of the prayers. And as I'm doing, I'm thinking of the birds and those eagles, because those are the ones that soar the highest. And they grab that smoke and those prayers and they bring it up to Creator for us. That's why we have our eagle feathers. We have our different things that represent that sacred bird. You know, I see it in churches very often where they have a lot of scripture with the symbol of the eagle by. And I always wondered if the Christians know the importance of bird. No, bird is very sacred, carries a lot of healing in it, and it gives a lot of prayers. So I don't know, I wanted to share that with everyone here and everyone that's going to ever watch this. That's important, that bird. So as we're lighting it, we're gonna speak to those winged ones up there to help us bring those prayers up to the Creator. So today, no fuel, no matches. We're gonna go real old. Maybe I'll come over, show a little closer here so you can see kind of how we're gonna do this. So this here is just birch bark, right? It's created into a cone we have inside. Some people call this chaga, right? Most people will know this as chaga. We call this shkatagan. Shkatagan it's very important. It comes from that birch tree. And people say it's for tea, or your blood helps a lot of things. But this is what's going to start this fire today, this little piece. You know, it gets held in, it's called a flint. So this is from one of the reserves in Ontario that was mapped out, and I cleaned it up so it's strong. We use a striker as well. So just by these elements, these two, along with our shkatagan, our chaga, you know, smoke, which will be placed inside this nest. So as you can see, it replicates a bird's nest inside of here. These are two different teachings that go along with these. You know, I have teachers that use only this way. I have teachers that only use this way. Now, I create a little bit of my own. I have also sacred medicines in here that are going to go into that fire that I prepare for it. So this is how we're going to start a fire today.
I guess I should brush my teeth. It's just going to show from those small sparks, it creates a little burn in here. And that's what's we're going to feed that a little bit. And that's what's going to create this fire.
one thing I want to talk about, like when this process takes a little bit of time, or we take our time. We don't have any rush. You know, this teaches us patience in our busy world, in our busy lifestyles of living in whatever lifestyle you have. There's always busyness and always rushing and running around. You know, with this way, we just slow down. We appreciate those little moments. And we think about, like, especially sometimes with firekeepers, especially young people coming into this, like, it's a lot of pressure for them. You know, when someone's lighting that fire, we pray for them. We say, you know, we hope that it's not too hard on them to get it going. And we think about those good thoughts, because essentially, like, I'll speak for me as a firekeeper, as an Anishinaabe person, as someone who is asked to go to multiple communities to do this. This has created purpose in my life, you know. And I talk about purpose because in the real world that they taught me in school and church and all these things, I've accomplished what I'm supposed to. I have that dream job, you know. I have the most secure job in the world. I'm a police officer. For me to get fired, it's very hard, you know. All these different things. I had a house. I have three beautiful children. I have all these things, but I felt like I was missing something. I was missing a spark, you know? And that spark came when I started learning about the fire and how important this is. And without the fire, it's our main thing of survival. It's our main start for all ceremony, for anything. Whenever we have a ceremony, we start that fire. And we need, like, good people there doing it. So when I see other men and I see other people stepping up and doing this work and finding a purpose, their lives become much better. You know, they talk about, I can't remember who had said this, but it was a beautiful way of saying it. My good cousin, Jay Shea, had shared this with me, but we go around talking to a bunch of people and they're always wondering, how do we correct things? How do we correct? How do we correct? You know what? I think the best way that we heard it is connection is correction. We start the connection within our individual selves that branches off into communities, into everything that we touch and we do. So then now we have this going. May need a little more work. And so this spark is what started my life. For 30 years of my life, I thought I had it figured out. And then I start finding these other ways and this beautiful way of life and these things that have been guiding me my whole life. Now I acknowledge them and I pray to them and I thank them, you know, and now I have purpose. I have real purpose in my life. And so I hold this right now because this is the closest a person gets to fire, a sacred fire. This is why we hold it in our hand until it's really going. You know, I'm sacrificing. People are sometimes scared of this, but I'm honored that it's allowing me to hold it while we're doing it. It's not really loving that I'm filming it, but it's okay. We're going to get through it. So essentially, this is your sacred fire. It's gonna go. We're gonna let it sit for a bit. I got a little help if I need it, but I want everyone collectively, as they're watching this, to think about, like, all these good things in our lives, the things we forget to be grateful for, the food on our table, the roof over our head. You know, we always want more and better and keeping up with the Joneses. It's time to put that aside and be grateful for what we have right in front of us. You know, right now, the sun's going to be going down soon. It's going to get cold. You know what's going to be great? Sitting around a nice warm fire to keep us that warmth, those prayers, that love. Like when your mother gives you that warm hug, or that grandmother that just holds you tight, you know, that love that we feel, you know, we feel it right here with this fire. Be right back. I gotta get some more stuff.
Thunderbird, Bob.
Yeah.
He told me I could call him whatever I want to call him. I like Thunderbird in this moment. Thank you so much. It was very emotional. I wish everyone who is on Zoom could have been here in person. It was very emotional to watch you as you held that fire before you set it down. I've never seen that happen before. And I felt the spirit within me. And I want to thank you for that moment. And as I said, I wish everyone on Zoom could have been here in person to see that, but we will share it with them.
One day we'll all be sitting around here, and as we travel around, and this also, for anyone that's here, there's these sacred fires are happening all over the place. They're not just get involved in the communities, right? Get involved with any type of Indigenous community, organization, reserve. We need help with this stuff. This is a lot of work to make this happen today.
It is, and we very much appreciate all of your work and your teaching. And I don't think I'll ever look at another fire in the same way. So thank you.
I hope that this helps. I really hope this helps, bring that spark out of everybody, because we all have an internal fire. I'm sure many of people talk about the internal fire, but we all have it inside. And as you saw, this started with a little tiny like a spark, right? Into an amber, and then into a tiny flame. And now we have this. This is like a beautiful representation of our lives. Sometimes our fires get big. Now we gotta work through this big fire, let it come down, so that we can lead with our hearts and our minds, and everything's aligned, mind, body, and spirit, right? You guys talk about that all the time, right?
We do.
So it's all about wellness, and it's all about, people talk about balance. I think it's harmony. We want to find harmony in our lives. We need to find balance between the emotions of everything, and then how to manage those and bring them together and use it in a good way, not towards evil or darkness. We talk about good and evil. We talk about, in our ways, we talk about the dark wolf and the light wolf, right? The black and the white. Which one are you going to feed today, right? That's our choice. It's our choice every day, which way we're going to take this fuel from our fires inside, and which wolf we're going to feed, or which God or who we're going to put that out to,
I like the harmony in ourselves, but also the harmony amongst all of us. Thank you. Miigwech to you.
So can I just add that the sacred fire, as I understand, Joyce, you're on there, and my understanding is that the sacred fire was started at the beginning of our meeting, and that there will be fire keepers tending the fire, making sure that fire continues to go, making sure that the prayers continue to rise to the Creator throughout the whole time that we are meeting. I wonder if you can maybe also spotlight Joyce on. Yeah, so we are in this whole meeting time, as we sleep, as we get up tomorrow and get prepared to come to the meeting, the fire is continuing to burn. The prayers are continuing to be lifted for us. We are surrounded in prayer.
Yes. And I have in my kitchen some of the people that help with the fire. This is the guy that started it. We have fire keepers there to keep it going through the night. And then, as you said, all day long. And it is important to us. I know it's not important to everybody else, but I love the fact that those women came to Cape.
Joyce, we loved being there. I can't tell you enough about how that whole ceremony touched us. It was absolutely incredible to be there.
Yes. Thank you, and for inviting us.
And it was important that you came. That was a big part for me.
Yeah, I hope everyone on Zoom recognizes that we were there to represent you, and we were so fortunate. Ken gave us a little bit of tobacco in our hands before the fire began, and we were to pray with that tobacco in our hands.
And then he came back and he collected that tobacco from us, and they used it to start the fire. It was laid on the bottom before the fire was laid, and so all of our prayers were put in with Thunderbird's prayers and Ken's prayers, and those prayers were on your behalf as well as our own prayers going into that. So it was just an incredible opportunity for us to be there. And thank you to Joyce and to Thunderbird and to Ken for giving us that wonderful, amazing opportunity. And I hope all of you get to experience that at some point.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mama me Gwedge. I'm saying goodbye, but I'm saying I'll talk to you later. But I'll see you tomorrow.
So we're going to close with a prayer and a hymn.
Christ has no body now but yours, no hands but yours. Here on this earth, yours is the work to serve with the joy of compassion. No hands but yours to heal the wounded world, no hands but yours to soothe all its suffering, no touch but yours to bind the broken hope of the people of God. Christ has no body now but yours, no hands but yours. Here on this earth, yours is the work to serve with the joy of compassion. No eyes but yours to see as Christ would see, to find the lost, to gaze with compassion. No eyes but yours to glimpse the holy joy of the city of God. Christ has no body now but yours, no hands but yours. Here on this earth, yours is the work to serve with the joy of compassion. No feet but yours to journey with the poor, to walk this world with mercy and justice. Yours are the steps to build a lasting peace for the children of God. Christ has no body now but yours, no hands but yours. Here on this earth, yours is the work to serve with the joy of compassion. Through every gift, give back to those in need. As Christ has blessed, so now be his blessing. With every gift, a benediction be to the people of God. Christ has no body now but yours, no hands but yours. Here on this earth, yours is the work to serve with the joy of compassion.
Let us pray. Creator God, we are so grateful for the technology that allows us to gather virtually. Despite being apart, you have drawn us together through your Spirit.
As we prepare to break for the night, we ask your blessing on each one of us, that our dreams may be sweet and our sleep may be restful. Refresh us and renew us so that when we gather once again tomorrow, we come prepared to be guided by your Spirit as we seek to guide the church to be the best that it can be in your service. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.